My name is Blake Roberts. I'm a senior environmental planner with the Delta Protection Commission and the Heritage Lead. Thank you all for coming today. We're really excited about this event. This is our second time doing this. I hope that every year it just gets larger and stronger, and so just appreciate everybody coming out today. I know that there's people from all around the Delta and the Carquinez Strait, from state agencies, from local agencies, from local historical societies, and just people that are passionate about agriculture and heritage and lots of different issues in the Delta. One of the things that we're really happy about is being able to use this particular building because it is, as you may know, it is a historic building. It was originally an elementary school, and then it's named after Gene Harvey, who is the principal of that elementary school for many years, and actually went to school in Walnut Grove as well, I believe. It's great that we can have a discussion about heritage that also is in a building that is all about heritage. One of the things that I wanted to just mention was that really this day is a celebration for all of those things that we care about. The wonderful, I mean, it's been a big year. This year we ended up having the National Heritage Area pass in March. So we're really excited about what that's going to mean and what that will mean in terms of heritage preservation and just welcoming people to the Delta and telling the story of the Delta for a lot of different people. So that being said, I might as well start on my presentation. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the National Heritage Area and what all that means in terms of the Delta. So what I wanted to do is to talk about the National Heritage Area, and that's probably on a lot of people's minds. Last year when we had this particular forum, the idea of the National Heritage Area was just a hope. Maybe someday we'll actually become a National Heritage Area. Well, now we are, and that has been a great achievement. I have to thank Senator Feinstein and Congressman Garamendi for their work in making sure that that passed Congress. And we're just happy that the Delta is the first California National Heritage Area. And this is a great thing to celebrate. But I wanted to let you know, in case you don't know what this is and what it means, I wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of what it is, what it can mean for the Delta, and then also what the next steps are ahead. What's a National Heritage Area? Usually the quick synopsis I give for people is that even though it's within the National Park Service, it is nothing like a national park. There is no federal ownership of land. There is no federal regulation of that land. Really what this is meant to be is a grassroots way of preserving history and to talk about the heritage of a certain area. It's really meant to be something that is organic and something that the region itself determines what it is. And so we do have assistance from the National Park Service, but really this is a local effort at heart. So it's designated by Congress. It tells a nationally important story. And so one of the things I will talk about in a few moments, is just what that nationally important story is of the Delta and what we've determined it is so far. And when I mean so far, I mean so far. There's still a lot more to go on this. It's grassroots, it's community driven. It supports a lot of different elements of heritage. Historic preservation, natural resources, recreation, educational projects, heritage tourism. There's lots of different elements to it. And there's no effect on water, hunting, or land rights in the Delta. So prior to 2019, there were 49 national heritages. And as you can see, a lot of that green is on the eastern side of the United States, the Midwest and East Coast. Gradually, there have been more national heritage areas in the West. Those have been more recent in vintage. The entire state of Tennessee is a national heritage area. It is focused on Civil War history, so has a very specific focus, but usually that's one of the things I want to advise people of, is that it can cover a lot of ground. With the most recent legislation, there were now 6 new National Heritage Areas. There is obviously ours. There are 2 in Washington. Unfortunately, I didn't have the logo for one of those. One is Maritime Washington, the other is Mountains to Sound in sort of along Interstate 90 in Washington. There's Santa Cruz Valley, which is in around Tucson area, and then 2 on the East Coast. One is Susquehanna Heritage, which is in Pennsylvania. It was actually a state heritage area before it became a national heritage area. And then Appalachian Forest is in West Virginia. So the role of the National Park Service is really to assist with the planning of a national heritage area, to provide technical assistance, to provide some funding, not a lot, but some funding, provide branding. And by branding, I mean just the great thing is that we are now under the umbrella of the National Park Service and all the benefits that come along from that. The arrowhead, which is up in the upper right, is a very valuable asset, and so now we can use that on the things that talk about the National Heritage Area and about the Delta. Technical assistance, and then also just the partnership of having the National Heritage Area, having the National Park Service work with us. So just a little synopsis of what happened with the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta National Heritage Area. And I apologize, I have to say the whole thing, the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta National Heritage Area, but there is also the Mississippi Delta National Heritage Area, and they get mad at us when we refer to ourselves as just the Delta National Heritage Area. So I will refer to us as the entire thing. Well, okay, today I'll just say Delta National Heritage Area. So in 2009, the Delta Reform Act called for the establishment and the recognition of the Delta as having state and national importance, and called on us on looking into the feasibility of making the Delta a national heritage area. Out of that process came the feasibility study, which was sort of approved by the National Park Service in 2012. Since that time, we've been waiting on Congress to kind of get moving on this legislation. Finally, earlier this year, it sort of happened, it was going very slowly, and then all of a sudden it happened very fast. In February, between February and March, it was about a month time period between the Senate passing it and the President signing the bill. As far as legislation, as far as Congress is concerned, that's fast. We're really pleased that now we're actually a National Heritage Area. So here are the Delta boundaries, and I apologize that these might be a little difficult to see. Some people might be familiar with the legal Delta, or the Delta as defined in a lot of state actions. The National Heritage Area boundaries are similar to the legal Delta, but they are slightly different. One of the things I will note is that it goes farther up into the Yolo bypass, farther north than the legal Delta does. It doesn't include any of the city of Sacramento, which is a bit of a shame, because we'd like to be able to tell the story of Sacramento, the downtown Sacramento, as well as the Delta as well. It doesn't include more the urbanized portion of San Joaquin County, and so that means that Stockton is currently not part of the National Heritage Area. Which for people from Stockton is it's a little frustrating, but at the same time, we think that that's something we can discuss during the course of the process over the next few years. Then it goes farther west. So it includes the Suisun Marsh, which is just south of Fairfield, and then it goes far as west as Vallejo and Hercules. So it includes much of the Carquinez Strait, which for us as a Delta, mostly Delta agency, is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking to a lot of groups and local agencies and the Carquinez Strait, which are not the ones that we usually talk to. One of the things that we've done over the last few years is that even though we haven't been a National Heritage Area, one of the things that we've attempted to do is to act like a National Heritage Area. And so as a result, we've been involved in a lot of different things. Delta Heritage Forum that you're attending today, that is our way of acting like a National Heritage Area. In fact, the reason that we sort of developed this idea was because the first National Heritage Area in Illinois also has an annual Congress that they have as well. This is a chance for people in the Delta to come together in one room, Delta and Carquinez Strait, to come together in one room and be able to celebrate heritage. We'll be talking about a few of these things today. There's the Delta Anthology, which we'll be discussing a little bit later. The Delta Awareness Campaign has sort of been a long-term effort to provide more publicity and really provide more of an identity for the Delta. Community action planning has been something that I've been working on, which is really going into the communities and talking to them about specific needs in those communities, and those are most of the unincorporated communities that are along the river, like Walnut Grove. The Delta Heritage Forum, which you're here today, Delta Heritage Projects was a project that we finished, but we're still kind of working on, which is our effort to work with local groups to work on certain heritage projects. And so one of the things that Will Middleton will be talking about a little bit later today is an effort in Clarksburg to rehab an 1883 schoolhouse. And that was one of the projects that we have provided some technical assistance and help with. Delta Narratives, Bob Benedetti is here today. He sort of led up that effort, but also Bill Swaggerty, who is one of the scholars on that. That was really an effort to, I think that was really the genesis for the forum, because it really provided an opportunity for a lot of different people to come together to talk about different elements of heritage. And one of the outgrowths of that were 4 essays which focused on different aspects of Delta history. Highly recommend Bill Swaggerty and Reuben Smith's essay on transportation is an excellent. The educational curriculum was something that was an outgrowth of Delta Narratives. We've been working on a 4th grade curriculum for people throughout the state. And I didn't have an opportunity, my son is in 4th grade, so I didn't have an opportunity to go talk to my son's class about the Delta, and I'm really hoping that a lot more 4th graders will learn about the Delta and their parents as well. The Holland Union Gakuen workshop was a workshop that we did several years ago that focused on the reuse of the old Japanese language schoolhouse in Clarksburg. There's actually, I'm not privy to the details, but I know that there's some rehabilitation going on to that structure right now. And then interpretive signs and sign plan. So the sign plan was a joint effort with the Delta Stewardship Council and with the Delta Conservancy to kind of focus on unifying the different elements of the Delta in terms of signs and making sure that there are signs that people can really understand and that get them from place to place, but then also are able to educate them about what's going on and what is happening in the Delta. So what are the next steps now that we're a National Heritage Area? Here's the planning cycle of a National Heritage Area. One of the things that we've already done is created the feasibility study, and that was finished in 2012. Really what that was supposed to do is identify whether the Delta and Carquinez Strait was a place that has nationally important story, if the process of creating a National Heritage Area was feasible. And they determined, yes, it is. The Delta does have a nationally important story. The next step now that we're designated is to create the management plan. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the management plan process is going to be a great effort on our part to sort of talk to lots of different groups, talk to lots of different people about heritage and where we're going with this. We really want this to be a true partnership. Even though the commission is the local entity in charge of the National Heritage Area, this is really not meant to be the commission's sole, we're not doing this by ourselves. We want to be able to partner with lots of different groups. After you do the management plan, at least in theory, when you do the management plan, then you're supposed to implement it. But one of the things I mentioned is that we already started work on a lot of different projects. So we're going to be working on those projects that we did even before we started the management plan and the management plan at the same time. So we're kind of doing things a little backwards, but one of the things that will be great about this is that we're sort of integrating those projects that we've worked on so far with sort of more of an overall strategy. And then finally, evaluation, which is sort of an opportunity to sort of learn from successes and from failures and try to figure out how to go forward. Typically the life cycle for National Heritage Areas in terms of legislation is about 15 years. So usually several years before the end of that 15-year period is when you're supposed to evaluate how you're doing and sort of provide a process forward. And when I say a 15-year time period, I mean in terms of funding. So the commission is the local coordinating entity. So what does that mean? We are responsible for developing the management plan, and I'll talk more about that in a second. We're also supposed to do a lot of public outreach, both during the process and after the process. This is going to be a living entity, and we need members of the public to be involved in this and to really, this will be a great opportunity for people to work together. We assist governments, nonprofits, and others in implementing the plan. And then finally, we'll submit an annual report to the Secretary of Interior, just letting people know how we're doing. So what does the management plan contain? I'm not telling you everything, because there are things in there they say you should do this and you should do that, but I'll just tell you kind of the main components of the management plan. One is a set of comprehensive policies, strategies, and recommendations. What are you going to do and how are you going to do it? And who's going to do it? The set of actions also just sort of get to that is who's going to be doing what. The resource inventory, which is something that we've been doing some work on already, is really sort of a grouping and sort of identification of different historical resources within the Delta. So for example, this building is definitely a cultural resource and an important historical resource in the Delta. So that's one of the things that we want to capture in that inventory, is identify all the places throughout the Delta that have some historic or cultural significance. The interpretive plan is something that some people might not be very familiar with. And as a result, one of the things I wanted to do is to make sure that we had a session later today which goes into more detail about interpretive plans. So the interpretive plan really is, well, actually I forgot, I do have a slide that talks about what the interpretive plan is, so I won't share that yet. And then potential implementation program and potential funding sources. So the interpretive plan determines how to achieve desired visitor experiences through intellectual and emotional connections with cultural resources. Really what you want to do is you want to identify why should people care about, when you're visiting a place, you want to know why you should care. And so that's what the interpretive plan helps you do. When you go to certain places, think about how many times you've gone to a place and it's touched you in some emotional or intellectual way. There's just something that's fascinating about that place. What an interpretive plan helps do is identify what those things are. What are the things that people will connect with when it comes to the Delta? And then also, of course, you want to protect and preserve those resources as well. So the interpretive themes are specifically the reasons why people should care about a particular resource. So in the feasibility study, they identified 5 interpretive themes for the Delta and Carquinez Strait. Now, these are not etched in stone. During the management plan process, we will be looking at these interpretive themes again, trying to determine whether they're still what we want to go with and if there's any changes that we want to make to these. So I'll just kind of run through these down very briefly. One is sort of a general interpretive theme, but it kind of deals with the importance of the Delta as a transportation resource, as a natural resource, just the geographic resource, because honestly there's only one other Delta in the world that is like the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. The conversion of the Delta from marshland to farmland was one of the biggest reclamation projects in the United States. Obviously the Delta wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the levees that you see just outside the window that keep this place dry. And so that is a big story to tell people, and to really, because the continuing effort that it goes to building and maintaining levees is really a great story, and really talks about the importance of the people in making this a place that could be continually habitated. The multicultural contributions and experiences have shaped the rural landscape. Obviously, there's a lot of stories to be told here in terms of different groups. This is an area that has been shaped by immigration time and time again. And also going back to the numerous number of tribes and tribelets that were here. So that's one of the things that we definitely want to tell. The agricultural fertility of the Delta is amazing. California as a whole is a great place to grow things, and the Delta is a place that has water and grows things. And so obviously there's been a great story in terms of the Delta in terms of its agricultural past. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about a little bit later today. And then obviously you can't talk about the Delta without talking about water resources and the many challenges that go along with that. Probably don't need to tell a lot of people in this room, water is an issue and will always be an issue in the Delta. That is obviously something that is contentious, but it's also a great story. And so that is a reason why we want to be able to talk about that within Delta Heritage. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what we're planning on doing going forward. We have to work on setting up the National Heritage Area Program as a whole, the larger program, and then also working on the management plan itself. And so that's going to take a lot of work. And so one of the things that we recently did is we went to the commission and got initial approval on a scope of work to kind of lay out the project management going forward for that, for all the different things that we have going on. There's a lot of moving parts. One of the things that we want to do at the commission is we want to have a handle on what things need to be done when, and what's the schedule, and possibly what money might be required, those sort of things. That is what the project management plans will sort of develop. And then also, of course, create a vision along with that. So that's one of the things that we'll be embarking on over the next couple months, and we'll be working on until the beginning of 2020. One of the things that we'll be able to do with this is that we'll be able to sort of provide plans going forward for different Delta agencies, for different groups out there. This is what we need your help with. And then also, we have to prepare a management plan within 3 years. And so this will help us do that up front. You have to go slow in order to go fast. Is the kind of idea is that we want to do that initial preparation, and then we can kind of go fast through the management plan process. Although, when I say we're going faster, that there's going to be a tremendous amount of public outreach through that process as well. I'll be coming and visiting a lot of different groups. I've already visited the Clarksburg Citizens Advisory Committee, and I have no idea how many more people I will be talking to, but it will be a lot more people in the next few months and years. So these are the projects that are continuing. Many of these you've seen before, but some are sort of things that have been in the hopper for a little while, and I think will be growing in importance. One of these is Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage. There's a lot of different, I think there's a lot of compelling stories about different immigrant groups, but I think Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage is probably one of the ones that might be most ready in terms of having a lot of tourist draw. You know, there's already a lot of people that have been coming to the Delta to see Locke and to experience Walnut Grove and the Japanese areas in Walnut Grove and Isleton, and the Little Manila and Filipina and in Stockton has been a really important asset. So this kind of brings all those things together. Obviously continuing held forward with the forum, the Trail Master Plan. Jeremy Terhune in the back there will be working on the Delta Trail Master Plan, but even though we're talking about a trail, there are definitely a lot of cultural elements to that as well. We'll be working on directional interpretive signs that's already in the works right now. Prohibition Centennial. Next year is the 100th anniversary of Prohibition starting. And there's a great story in the Delta in terms of Prohibition. So, and I think there's a really opportunity to kind of celebrate that. I'm really hoping to get people involved in that and kind of move forward with that. And then visit CA Delta. In case you're not aware of this is a website that was created by the Commission and the Conservancy, but really is meant to be sort of we're hoping eventually that this will be handed over to a local group to handle. This is visit cadeltaweb.com is a website. I encourage you to visit that and to see all the resources that are on that. Here are the ways you can be involved. Participate in all of our outreach for different elements of the National Heritage Area. We want to have partnerships on different projects and events. We're really looking to work with different groups on whatever we can. Provide technical assistance and research. I love being able to go to local historical societies, talk to the historians, and get that information that we don't necessarily have. The valuable information is in the Delta with local historical societies. And so we want to, all that is fantastic. And then obviously there's an opportunity to volunteer with all the partner organizations as well. So that's it for today. I'm just very grateful that you're all able to come out and hope that you have a great time today. Encourage you to hear about all the different things that are going on and all the potential things that are out there. So with that, thank you.
Let me throw the first one out because people are probably wondering, they've heard that the National Heritage Area designation includes federal funding.
Yes. Oh yes, thank you. There will be some federal funding, but it's not going to be, what we've been told is not necessarily going to be a lot, at least not right now. One of the things that you might not be surprised about, that funding on federal funding can be, it can be hit or miss. And there is a possibility that they might discontinue all funding for the program. But we're hopeful that during the course of the management plan process, we'll be getting we're hoping, and what we've been told is that we might expect about $150,000 per year to kind of move forward with that. And then once the management plan is finished, about $300,000. So that's not necessarily a huge amount of money, but I think one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to use leverage that money for different efforts. One of the things that I came across, which I think is critically important, is that on a nationwide basis, for every federal dollar that National Heritage Areas spend, there's $5.50 worth of private, it tracks $5.50 of other funding. That's really what we want to be able to do, is to leverage the funding that we have from the federal government for additional things going on in the Delta. Yes?
I have a question about the master trails. Is that going to include like bicycle trails through the Delta? I know there's a lot of nice slutty roads, and maybe that's in line with the historical district.
Jeremy, you can probably talk to Jeremy during the break on that, but it will be multi-use. So the idea is to have different ways of traveling. So bicycle, a water trail, perhaps because of all the water that's here. Also equestrian possibly, and foot. It's really meant to be a multi-use trail. And there are portions of it that are already designated. Those are in more urban parts of the Delta, West Sacramento, along the Carquinez Strait. But we're hoping, and Oakley has some portion to that, but we're hoping to expand that network. And so the Delta Trail Master Plan really will be aimed at sort of encouraging more of that. Sorry, I forgot to say the Sacramento and San Joaquin, Sacramento and Stockton also have portions of the Delta Trail as well. Yes?
You might make mention of our partnership with the National Park Service.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So we are working with the National Park Service. They're providing us assistance with the Delta Trail Master Plan, in particular looking at the cultural aspects of that. Because we think that there's really an opportunity to sort of connect different cultural resources together through pedestrian and bicycle connections. One of the things I will note, just because we're here in Walnut Grove, is that Locke is about a half mile down the road, but getting there on foot or bicycle is a little dicey. So that isn't even really that long of a trek. But given the number of cultural resources between those two towns, having something that's more pedestrian and bicycle friendly would be a tremendous asset.
So the management plan process, is that planned to be a partnership with the local historical societies, or is it?
We'll be reaching out to lots of different groups. So one of the things I will be doing soon is probably starting to do outreach. I'll probably be coming to to historical society meetings, to city council meetings, to counties. We want to do outreach wherever we can to reach out to different groups. So with that, we'll switch over to our first session. Thank you all for coming today.